Every single product that exists on Earth has an impact on the environment, and it's our responsibility and duty as designers to research that and to try to design products that don't have such a significant impact on the planet. So we have a tool called a life cycle assessment, and it's a way of evaluating right the way from cradle to grave what is that impact on the planet. Let's investigate this further. Right, so here's a question. Which do you think is worse for the environment? The car that I drive or the clothes that I'm wearing? Okay, so the car that I'm driving right now obviously has an impact on the environment. So this is called an in-use impact. So it has to be filled with fuel, and that fuel in turn emits carbon emissions into the ozone layer. So that's an in-use side effect of this product of the car. But there's more to think about than just that. It's not just when you're using a product. There's other things to consider. Okay, so let's start off by talking about a simple product. So a wooden bird box, for example, that doesn't have any obvious in-use impact. So to start off with, this wood actually comes from a tree. So that tree has to be cut down. And obviously that has an impact on the habitat for any animals that live there and for the environment, because trees play a vital role in our climate. As well as that, the actual machinery and equipment that's used to cut that tree down and then pick up those logs and transport them to another location, that all uses fuel, and that fuel obviously emits carbon emissions as well. So right from the very start, we've got some initial impacts on the environment. And that's not even considering the fact that these trees might not be naturally grown. They might be grown using pesticides or chemicals to enhance their growing, if it's a tree farm, for example. So those logs are then transported to a storage facility where they're treated to stop them rotting. That has a chemical impact. And then they're transported to another location where they'll be turned into what we call a stock form. So those lorries will obviously also have a carbon footprint. Now, when the logs arrive at these factories, they're treated, so they're stripped of bark, which creates waste material. And of course, we've got the energy used to use these machines. And they're then cut and sawn into a variety of different stock forms. So the most common one would be planks. They're sawn down to varying widths. And again, this uses energy and it creates waste, because all that sawdust, all that excess bark, anything that's not part of the plank is then waste. So once we get to that level of them being stripped and cut down into planks or sheets of varying sizes, they then need to be treated against, they need to be dried of any moisture. So that sometimes needs heating, which is artificially done to dry them out, or it might be done using chemicals. So again, all of those things have an impact. And even then, even once they're sawn into planks, they'll then need to go through processes of planing for quality control. And this is to make sure that they're flat or they're straight, because it's no good going through all this effort to cut a tree down if it then bends and warps and it can't be used for building or construction or other uses. So once they're in their stock forms, they're saved and they are stored again. And these can be mostly in the form of planks, sheets, or mouldings, such as dowel rods or anything that's been routed. So you see these decorative pieces on your skirting boards, things like that. Well, the main form is really sheets and logs that you'll buy them in. Sorry, sheets and planks. We then buy these in their stock form, ready to turn into the product. So that bird box, seemingly very simple, already through a lot of different processes. Some of the main processes that we use are wood turning, which uses energy, creates a lot of waste. There's sawing, which is probably the most common one, and you can saw by hand, which is better for the environment but takes a lot longer. But there are also machineries, equipment that you can use to saw with, and again that still creates waste. You've also got drilling as well, and once you've shaped and created your parts, you will end up with a nearly finished product, so a constructed product. However, once you've made your product, you then need to go through a process called finishing, and this is where you will sand it smooth, get rid of any burrs. You'll apply a finish such as a paint or a wax or a varnish. So there's a whole range of different things that we can apply to a finish, and these make it last longer, which is good because it preserves the use of that product. But some of these finishes have chemicals in them and could be toxic. There are natural finishes, such as honey or wax or oils. However, some finishes do have chemicals. So then, as you can see, we've got the in use. Now, the in use of this, it's not really doing anything negative for the environment. In fact, it's a positive thing. So unlike the car, this actually has quite a good in-use impact on the environment. But eventually it will die and it will no longer be of use. So we have some options. We can repair or we can reuse. So we can upcycle, as this person's doing with this old chair. Wood is natural, so it will rot over time, and it can be recycled. So in this case, all wood, it will go to a recycling plant. It will be stripped of any artificial finish that's on it, and then those bits of wood will be gathered and then smashed up into little pieces, broken down, and then they can be mixed in with paper, with cardboard, with fiberboard. Anything that's got a wood base can all be shredded down into tiny little bits of pulp, and then they're poured into a big container containing water where it's all mixed and it's turned into this kind of mushy pulp, a little bit like a cement mix. And once it's at the certain consistency, it can then be recycled into a brand new material. So fiberboard, either high density or medium density or low density. You've got cardboard, you've got recycled paper, and just products that are generally made out of recycled wood. That is how they will be made out of that recycled wood. Okay, so that was just a life cycle of a wooden bird box. Now, at the start of the video, I asked you which you thought was worse for the environment, whether you thought it was the car that I drove or the clothes that I was wearing. So on the PowerPoint that you've got now to work on, I want you to carry out a life cycle assessment of both of those products. Now, I have included some YouTube links that will help better explain some of the processes, for example, how clothes are made and what can happen to them at the end of their life, and that will help you fill out the life cycle assessment. I want you to carry out the life cycle assessment of both of those products, and then in your opinion, which one do you think is worse? Okay, so that's your task. Good luck.